survey that, oh, thanks for recording, through the online survey that followed. And thank you to everybody who took the time to provide some written comments after our last PAT meeting. So in some cases, I think you'll probably see your comments directly reflected in either the revised goals or the policy statements. In other cases, it was more a matter of sort of tweaking some existing language, shifting things around a little bit, or making sure that your comments were captured somewhere else in a policy statement or in a goal. And in some cases, it was more a matter of understanding that a comment was really more of an action or like an implementation item and probably not appropriate for like a policy level document. But just be assured that we really combed through your comments very carefully and meticulously to try to make sure that we captured everything that we could capture. We also looked at your existing comp plan, goals and policies. There's still a lot of useful and relevant language in there. And of course, we're looking at everything through the lens of the vision statement that we spent so much time creating, that you all spent so much time helping us create. And also, you know, the approach of our experience and understanding best practices around creating comp plans. So kind of a whole bunch of inputs getting stirred in the pot, leading us to where we are today. You all have seen this graphic several times. This is just sort of a high level look at what is a comp plan. It's a vision statement, which we have prepared, and its goals and policies, which we are working on now. This comprehensive plan won't include action items. We are kind of the city, I think Christina can probably confirm this, but we plan to start sort of tracking things that we hear that are action items or implementation items, so that those ideas are captured, even though they won't be part of the comp plan document itself. Oops, sorry. So what we're going to look at now, just quickly, are the revised goal statements. And then when we get into our breakout rooms, we'll be talking in more detail about the draft policy statements, which we haven't looked at as a group before. We've looked at policy concepts, but not the full policy statements. So we're going to take a quick look at the goals and how they've changed, and also take a quick look at a summary of the feedback that we got from the online survey that was posted after the last PAT meeting. And I think we had, did we say seven respondents to that survey? And it was just a super quick, like, here's the goals and policies. Are we on the right track, or do they need a little bit of work, or are they way off track? And these are the results for each of the 4 topic areas or chapters of the comp plan. And so you'll see diverse economy and connected infrastructure maybe needed a little bit more work than healthy and welcoming communities and protected environment. It's just a quick snapshot of what we were hearing.
Sorry, the text is so small, but it is just meant as a visual look at kind of where we landed.
Yeah, sorry. I should have noted green.
That's all we need to know.
Yeah, green is we're on the right track. Blue is needs a little bit of work.
Yeah.
Thanks, Annie. A quick note before we get into this. There weren't a ton of revisions to the goal statements themselves. The bulk of the work that we did was really around moving from those policy ideas to full policy statements. And hopefully you all had a chance to look at those because, like I said, we'll be talking about those in more detail when we get into the breakout rooms. But we did want to show you the changes that were made to the goal statements, the few that were there. I'm not going to read each slide and each goal statement to you, but generally wanted to point out that the changes were really about wordsmithing, maybe choosing a better word, choosing less detail, tweaking language to more accurately reflect what we're trying to reflect. So that's kind of the nature of the changes that we made to the goal statements across the board. So you'll see under healthy and welcoming communities, there were a couple of different changes. The first one, talking about historic and cultural resources, adding and changing some language there. And then under number 4, just changing a word, just a different word choice. And most of these are based on comments that we got from PAT members. In some cases, it might be us wordsmithing a little bit more to reflect, but in some cases, it's like a direct word choice that came from one of you. Quick questions about this one before we move on. And we'll have time to talk more about these in the breakout rooms, but anything anyone wants to, and I can't see everybody right now. So if you, Anais, tell me if someone's got a hand up or anything.
Yeah, don't see anything.
Okay, I'll move on. Under diverse economy, one change to the housing options policy. Again, word choice and taking out a lot of the descriptive language around households and just calling them households. It was one of those things where if you start trying to list all of the different characteristics of households, it just gets to be long. And so we took it out. Right, I'm going to move on. Connected infrastructure, a couple of different word choices in the first policy and some additional words added to the last policy having to do with sustainability and resiliency. Comments there? Okay, last one, protected environment. Ray, you want me to go back?
Yes, please. I guess I'm trying to understand the difference between equally serves all modes of travel and equitably, because in my mind, as someone who doesn't own a car, I think of that as prioritizing, we've been doing car planning for 50 to 100 years. And does that mean that we will put more budget and policy efforts into non-car modes? Or does that mean, okay, we'll do everybody equally, all modes equally going forward? So I guess I'm trying to understand equal versus equitably.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And this is a distinction that I have struggled with in the past, but the way I understand it, the way I see it is equally means if you've got 10 people, you're giving everybody $2. Mm-hmm. This is just, I'm trying to simplify.
Yeah.
Equitably means you're taking into account each individual's sort of circumstance and allotting the money differently depending on circumstance so that the outcome or the result or the impact is more equal among them, if that makes sense. So like, if you give everybody $2 might mean a lot to somebody and nothing to somebody else. If you give this person $10 and this person 50 cents, you have a much greater impact in terms of the outcome or the result. I don't know if that's I don't know if that helps, but that's in my mind, that's kind of the distinction. Happy to hear other people's thoughts on that.
Hey, can I interject on something?
Please.
If I've sorry, I'm coming in on this. I was having a hard time. I was asked what the difference was, and in an interview, and I started talking, and then realized I didn't know the difference. And I did a little study up on it, and there is an amazing cartoon out there that shows 3 people of different heights standing at a fence looking over at a baseball game. So the people that were shorter couldn't see the baseball game. And then the next cartoon was the same 3 people of differing heights on different boxes that gave them a view over the fence to see that baseball game. And that was equity. So if you stand 3 people of differing heights on the ground in front of a tall fence, only the tallest people can see over, and the people that aren't that tall can't see over. So you adjust the boxes that they stand on.
I guess I should clarify my question because I understand the difference between equality and equity. I'm just in
okay, sorry.
Yeah, I should be more clear about that. The thing I'm struggling with is the reality of this goal in our realistic planning world that we've been playing for cars for the last 50 to 100 years. And I don't see that changing anytime soon, at least the way that the federal government and state government have been planning for cars. And so is it realistic to put that word change in there? Because I don't see that happening in the next 20 years. I think we're still gonna be car focused, car centric for the next 20 years. That's my concern. Thank you.
Ray, I actually think that using the word equitable in this statement actually does elevate the role of non-motorized modes much more strongly than using the word equally. I think that here we're then kind of emphasizing the fact that as we prioritize different transportation improvements, we are looking at things that more than just roadway improvements, which has been in the past or historically synonymous with transportation improvements. So while maybe federal or regional kind of investments feel like they are not prioritizing non-motorized modes, I do think that kind of pushing along the word equitable because first of all, it resonates with city goals and also resonates with just equity as a standalone piece in this process. I do think that it supports that understanding that non-motorized modes, biking and walking, are of equal or more more importance when we start reviewing and prioritizing transportation improvements. $10 going towards roadway improvements might not be much for cars, but might be a lot for bike and pedestrian improvements. So I think that's what we're trying to capture here.
It helps. Thank you.
I think it's also important to keep in mind that these are high-level goals. They're lofty statements. You have to, they're important, but when you start getting into the implementation, into the action items, that's where some of the, sort of more grounding in reality occurs. Yeah. Okay. Last one, but thank you. That's a good question and comment. Protected environment, again, some very small word changes and word additions, and nothing significant here. Any questions about these? And I think with this, we're ready to move into breakout sessions. What's our next slide?
Yeah.
Great.
So thank you, Sarah, for just walking us through those revisions.
Do we need breakout sessions? Sorry.
I'm sorry.
Do we need to do breakouts? How many do we have at this point?
Yeah, I was just going to actually poll the group and see what people felt like. It says we have 12 folks in the room, but I just looked through it and we have about 6 PAT members. I do know, I think Ray Gordon is on the phone with us. Do people want to divvy up into much smaller groups, or do we want to work through this content together? We certainly don't, we can do either. I guess raise of hands if we want 2 separate groups.
Can I preface that with one point? The plan was to break out, and one group was going to do healthy and welcoming communities and diverse economy, and the other group was going to do environment and infrastructure. If we don't do a breakout group, we need to cover all 4 of those topics. So there's less time to spend on each topic, but the opportunity to look at all 4 of them instead of just 2. So those are the trade-offs.
I guess my main concern with keeping one big group is, like, I don't want to be dominating conversation the whole time. I want to allow everyone to say something, and having smaller groups may allow people who don't usually participate to participate. So that's the main thing I would see with having smaller groups, is to allow more people to talk.
Okay, so I guess raise your hand for small groups. Okay, I see 2 folks, 3 folks.
I'm not voting.
Let's break out into two small groups. I will go ahead and do that. So sorry for the delay here. Let me just go ahead and do that. I'm
going to stop sharing if that's okay.
Please do. Yeah. So I'm going to let participants choose group 1 or group 2. Group 1 will be healthy and welcoming communities and diverse economy. Group 2 will be protected environment and connected infrastructure. Okay, so group 1, communities and economy. Breakout session 2, environment and infrastructure. Okay, here we go. Oh, we're not going yet. I'm sorry, I have to. Here we go.
I assume you're assigning me. I don't need to choose, right?
I will do that in a moment. I think everyone needs to choose. Sarah, I will.
I don't see an option.
I will assign you to 1. Here we go.
Okay. Oops.
Yeah, and you assign me to whatever one you think makes sense.
Great. One moment here. I'll assign you to 2 with myself in a moment once I get everyone there.
Hello.
Take this off because the cleaner's left.
Okay, group 2, we are looking over infrastructure and environment. So let me go ahead and share my screen. We have the policies up on slides. It'll be a lot of content, but I figured it's a little bit easier than navigating that PDF that we were trying to do last time. So let me do that. Can everyone see my screen?
We see the equity. We still see the equity Google Doc.
Goodness. Okay. I'm sorry. Let me just try that one more time. How about now?
Yes.
That's good.
We're good?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. So just a reminder, for connected infrastructure, we have 4 goal statements with a number of policies. And then in environment, we have 3 goal statements with a number of policies. So I'll just start from the top. I'll let folks kind of read as they wish. And just as a reminder, really the purpose of the discussion is to go through the content, look through the policy statements, and then, if there's any additional ideas you have or any feedback or reactions or reflections, please go ahead and share them with the group. But we're just here to make sure that we've captured all of the right ideas. And if there's anything missing, that we also have that noted. So this first goal is about transportation, multimodal transportation, accessible and safe transportation network. Some of these policy ideas were already presented in the last PAT meeting. It looks like we have 1 new policy idea here that is related to or connecting connecting the transportation network to the city's carbon footprint. We talk about safety, prioritizing improvements in underserved neighborhoods, transit service, parking and transportation demand management. Yes, Ray.
I have a question about the last one. It's folks of downtown, and I do this work at CCC. And so I'm wondering about making that a citywide goal instead of a downtown focus goal.
Okay. Yeah, I think you've mentioned that before. I think they're, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, Ray, that's exactly the sense that we still need to actually implement our downtown TDM plan. but we need to support other organizations or other locations that may want to, but like, we got to put our energy towards downtown to find a success, but how do we acknowledge both?
Okay.
I have two comments. One is, I know Oregon City hasn't really done much of like Vision Zero, but one thing I think we'd be remiss in this comp plan if we don't have a conversation about speed and local street speed, and it has support for reducing the speed to support multimodal, especially walking and pedestrian safety. And so I don't want to lose that. It doesn't necessarily need to be a policy right now, but I want it to be in the conversation.
I think that would go in C, policy C, if we specifically say Vision Zero instead of just saying safety.
Yeah, but Vision Zero has such its own thing, and I don't want to necessarily throw that in.
It's comprehensive. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if it's street design. Yeah, it may be fine. I just want to make sure that somewhere in our comp plan, we talk about supporting reducing speeds in local streets. And I don't know where the right place is. And we don't need to wordsmith it now.
But thank you, Christina. I'm just noting that as just a concept. I think there's room to put that in for sure.
Okay. And I think Ray brought a point up that I think is great. And I don't know if it's in the policies or if it needs to be tweaked, but it's like, we say we want multimodal, we say we want to invest, but like, sometimes we have to, this is us back to choosing, and when there's conflicts of like, when we can't have everything, we should be looking at, like, we should be really looking at our other modes and how we spend our money. And so it's really like if we can't have everything, how do we make our decisions? And that I think is a really important piece to put in here somewhere, but I don't know where.
I think a prime example of that is the Oregon City Westland Bike Ped Bridge project that has not been approved yet. And I think like everyone's focused on I-205 widening and all that. And it's like, if we're prioritizing bike ped, it means prioritizing bike ped, not look at widening I-205. So that's, in my mind, that's one area.
So, yeah.
Christina, is there any, so it's always the age-old question of how do we prioritize? And, the work of a comprehensive plan is to provide policy direction, but it's also comprehensive in nature, which is funny in that it also has to cover everything, and everything has multiple competing objectives. Is there any like language that would help kind of with that prioritization, or do you see that coming through in the implementation measure? I'm just kind of curious to pick your brain on that.
I think it comes in implementation letters, but there's something I think that would be important here to say, when you can't have everything, you still got to think about other modes, and sometimes prioritizing those over congestion or, or other vehicular performance standards. And so I don't have the answer, but this is, I think, one of the issues with our existing comp plan is it's everything, you can find something to support something. And so if this is something that people care about, which is promoting multimodal infrastructure, how do we bake it into our comp plan policies, and the point where like, this is really important, especially when you have to make hard decisions.
Right. Okay, I'm making a note of that. There may be some elements that we can kind of elevate through language here that help make that more pertinent.
Thank you for pushing that point.
Yeah. Any other comments or feedback before we move to the next goal?
Yeah, this is Roseanne, HBA. I have a comment. So when we were all together as a group, the distinction between equity and equality came up. And item C here says promote safety by implementing street design that equally considers and serves non-motorized and motorized users. And I'm wondering if just for consistency, we want to use the word equitably.
Perfect.
Because, if you order anything, or you go to eat dinner anywhere, or you go to a food cart or anything, like those products or those consumables got there from usually a vehicle, right? And so like there is a role, you know, for motorized vehicles to get us the things that we need to live life, and that we desire to live life, right? I mean, we all want, you know, nice restaurants in our communities and access to like essentials and sundry items. And so motorized and non-motorized will have different planning elements to them. And it won't be like, okay, 5 million to both, you know?
Right. Thanks for that, Roseanne. Appreciate it. Any other comments or feedback? Okay, let's move to the next one. Second goal under infrastructure. So this is about public utilities and public facilities. Public utilities primarily. Ensure public utilities and infrastructure are maintained and improved to adequately serve all existing areas of Oregon City and can be extended to serve newly developing areas in a logical and fiscally responsible manner. So here we have 5 policies. Regularly update city infrastructure and utility master plans, very important. Adjusting system development charges. Prioritizing public infrastructure investments in areas that are historically underserved, increase resiliency in these systems with regards to climate change and natural hazard events, coordinating citywide communication and outreach efforts around utility rates and operational charges, and then last, support public-private partnerships to expand publicly available high-speed internet service citywide. So it looks like we have one new policy and one partially new policy or concept.
Mm-hmm. I know we've been coordinating with Public Works, and I know Laura did, but we want to make sure we get this to John Lewis, our Public Works Director, in this new version. So I didn't know if that's Teresa. My role is probably after this meeting is to coordinate and make sure that that gets done. Okay.
Yeah, that would be great. So that'll be part of the work of kind of shopping this content out to the various committees and departments and such.
Okay.
Yes, definitely.
I have a question
Any
about
reflection. Sorry.
I have a question about policy D. How this policy related to climate change? Because in my mind, I think of like electric vehicles and electric vehicle charging stations. Is that included in that policy, or does that need to be a separate policy?
Connecting the transportation network to climate. Is that what you're saying, Ray?
Yes.
So we do have that in the last, we do talk about the city's carbon footprint in 1B. But there could be some language here that adds that not only is it emphasizing active transportation modes, but it's also emphasizing alternative fuels.
That'd be helpful. I know this is CCC that we're trying to plan for more charging stations for electric vehicles. And so I think that's going to be the future.
Perfect. Okay, I'll make a note of that for the first one.
Thanks.
All right, back to this one. Any other comments, feedback?
Yeah, this is Roseanne again. So because it's a partially new policy, number B there on system development charges, you know, some of the cities on the forefront of their planning for Hospital 2001 are exploring variable rate SDCs based on, you know, size of the home or bedrooms or other kind of data, right, through AC, like the American Household Survey data and other surveys. And so I would love to see that incorporated, or the exploration of that, or maybe something like to ensure the benefit of new development is both captured and, you know, appropriately burdened, or like made responsible for, like appropriately. Again, it's about equity, right? So like a larger home has been shown to generally, in certain buckets of infrastructure, like tax the system more versus smaller homes generally for certain buckets of infrastructure tax the system less. And I know that Oregon City has like a little bit, I think, of a tiered policy, you know, between multifamily and single family right now, but it's, you know, there's not much in between.
Right. And within single family, we are not tiered yet. And that's something we will have to look into.
Yeah. And a lot of jurisdictions are looking at it now with planning for master plan communities in the expansion areas. I know Oregon City doesn't have that, but like they will have, you know, some subdivisions that will come online with previous expansion areas over the next 20 years.
Excellent. I like the exploration of just variable rate SDCs. I think that policy kind of tries to get at the fact that there is variability obviously in development, and that system development charges will need to react to that variability. But yeah, I haven't, I guess, heard the term variable SDC rates, but that makes a lot of sense. Any other reflections, feedback? Move to the next one. Okay. Third goal for infrastructure. So this is about safety, health, welfare for all Oregon City residents through the provision of comprehensive public facilities and services. So yeah, focused on safety. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 policies here. So here we talk about digital communications. So we've always had that conversation around bridging that digital divide, maintaining high level of police and fire protection. This is also, we start talking about emergency preparedness and climate change resiliency efforts and programs. So kind of beyond just infrastructure, but also in terms of public services and facilities. Coordinating with our service providers to ensure that we have public utilities and infrastructure, and then ensuring adequate funding to pay for these facilities and services. All of these probably seem very matter of fact, but it's always important to include them, because if you don't, you don't. I'm sure we all have all sorts of ideas for how we want to get about to these things, but we're still working at a fairly high level here. Thoughts, reflections, ideas?
I have one thought. I don't know if it's in this section or another section to be in, but I'm thinking of the autonomous delivery vehicles that are coming about these days, and how they will need access to, you know, digital communication tools that I don't know if they exist to be able to have, like, you know, delivery vehicles on the sidewalk or in a bike lane. And even if the city supports that, I don't even know if we have a policy for that yet. And so preparing the city for the future of these, whether it's on the ground delivery vehicles or drones in the air, Amazon delivering vehicles, looking at that future. I think that's coming pretty soon.
That's interesting in the sense that it's also might be a safety piece as well. And like, how do you capture that without diving into the specifics?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's at least important to just call out that future is coming.
Yeah, I was curious though, right? Because people talk about, driverless cars 15, 20 years ago, and we're still waiting. So it's like, I don't know.
And I'm not sure that's going to really improve our level of service. I think it could actually make it worse, right?
Yeah.
You take a car and you send it to do 30 other trips while you're at work, right? So.
Yep. I'm just trying to think where to plug that in this topic, because I'm not saying it is easy, we have a solution for it tonight.
Yeah.
But I think at least being aware that future is on horizon and it'll be here for the next 20 years. I'm just trying to think where we should be in this to have further discussions about this topic.
I think the concept of technology we can bring back up in that first slide about transportation specifically.
Okay.
Because I do think that there is a role for alternative fuels that we already talked about, but then also just
autonomous vehicles and safety of autonomous vehicles. And so autonomous vehicles could be many, many, many things, not just a car.
Yes.
Yeah.
Certainly.
Yep.
Certainly. But there is a role in digital communications or just like access and availability of technology for those sorts of things that we can certainly bake that idea into one of those policies.
And also, I don't know if it's in this section or another section, but I know Clackamas County is planning for mobility hubs, like around Clackamas Town Center and I think downtown. And so looking at how to integrate when bike share, scooter share comes to Clackamas County, how all these different modes of transportation have a hub and the digital communications that needs to support that mobility hub is something that I'm interested in exploring.
Great. Thanks for that, Ray.
Yeah.
Anything else on this one? Okay, I'm going to move to the last one, connected infrastructure, and then we have 3 more. Last one is promote and support energy conservation, sustainability, and resiliency through best practices in infrastructure planning, operations, and management. So here we're elevating the concept of sustainable practices and management and operation, green, sustainable, low impact approaches to stormwater, prioritizing green street design and new development and redevelopment. D, coordinate infrastructure, support the development of climate-friendly and equitable communities. That is a direct call out to some legislation that is coming down the pipeline.
Yep.
And then E, support opportunities to increase densities in your activity and transit centers.
I'm just curious with regarding the E, should we clarify what type of densities to increase, or is it okay to leave that vague?
I like it vague, Ray.
Okay, I want to clarify that.
Yeah.
All of them, all of them.
Yeah, that's for us too.
I see Roseanne is carefully looking and digesting all of this.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if this is like a tactic to support D, but mixed use.
Roseanne, your internet is a little slow, but I heard mixed use.
Right, with like retail ownership or apartment style rentals is a way to get at it. Or is it something we should call out specifically? Like combined uses, mixed use development.
Roseanne, I wasn't able to hear your full statement. You cut out just a bit. I heard emphasis on mixed use as part of policy D, or maybe I didn't hear that correctly. I don't know if anybody else did.
I didn't hear.
I think she was talking about, I think Roseanne was talking about coordinating of, mixing of uses to support climate friendly and equitable communities.
Okay, so I turned off my video. Is that better? Can you hear me?
Yes,
okay.
Yes.
All right, yeah. So basically, I'm wondering if you guys think that a mix of uses, mixed use development, which would support D, should be, specifically called out, or if it's, if you think of it as more of a tactic to get at D and, all of them, frankly.
Right.
Sustainable practice, it could be under all of them. So
Roseanne, I think I like the concept of mixed use, but some people take mixed use very literally, and sometimes coordinating a building that's one use next to a building that's the other use is still doing that, but some people can't get out of their head that mixed use has to be mixing uses and like clustering and I worry about the term mixed use. People take it like literally like it must be a 1/4 building, right, or nothing.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I get you. Even, yeah, a mix of uses.
I think it may also be helpful to understand that the climate-friendly equitable communities law that was passed statewide pushes for mixed use. Like the law is directing cities to do what we're talking about. It's just we didn't call it out here.
Yeah. Fair enough.
I get your point though. It's a good point.
Great. Anything else here before we move on to environment? We're actually working through all this stuff. This is great. Okay. I realize that as a host of the meeting, I don't have an opportunity to do a quick time check with Sarah in the other room. So let me see if I can navigate and just check in with her to see where she's at with her group. We have plenty of time, and the agenda has us moving on to the next item at 7:15. So I think we have about 15 more minutes. Let me just see if I can share that with Sarah. One moment. This is the part where I'm doing multiple things on my screen, so just bear with me for a moment here.
You have a lot of tabs.
You have a lot of tabs. Hi all. Let's plan to be back in. I just broadcast a message to both groups. Did you guys get that up on your screen?
Yeah, we did.
Yes,
awesome. It doesn't come up on mine, but hopefully they got it too. Okay, great. All right, let's move on to protected environments. We have about 15 minutes or so, but I think we've got plenty of time. Oh, this is it. Okay, so this one has 3 goals rather than 4, but still a number of policies. So the first one is about parks and trails. So providing and maintaining a comprehensive system of parks, trails, recreation amenities that is accessible to residents of all ages and abilities, enhances the environmental and visual quality of the community, and encourages healthy living. So this incorporates a lot of the goals from the parks plan, which is always nice when those things, when there's parity between those 2 different planning efforts. Looks like we have a partially new policy as part of policy D.
Great, I love D.
Yeah.
Is there one farther down about parks and open spaces for all ages and ability? I mean, we have all ages and ability. We have I just want to make sure we talk about kind of elder-friendly parks and activities for teenagers. I mean, just the things that aren't what you think of as singles taking a run and families with little kids.
Yeah, I don't see that. So I guess we have
maybe D would be age. We could just add age to the regardless of ability, age, comfort level. That might get my piece.
Yeah, okay, perfect. I like the elder and youth wording. Excellent. I just made a note of that. Any other reflections, feedback on this?
I guess one thing I have regarding D, it says parks, and then our other policies are saying parks and trails. Do we need to add parks to D, or like, I'm just trying to make sure that trails are also looked at from all those different, because sometimes we say parks, sometimes we say parks and trails.
And we have parks, trails, and open space.
Yeah. So this one, make sure we're consistent throughout, because I think all of them need these kind of improvements.
So addition of trails and open space.
I don't know if you need I don't know if for D necessarily needs to call out open space, but I think definitely identifying trails has been like the sad little sister of Oregon City. We have great plans, but it's really hard. And so the more we can emphasize trails, the better.
Perfect. Okay. Great. Anything else? All right, let's move on to the next one. Okay, this is about natural resources and ecosystems. So air, land, and water quality, and also wildlife habitats. So a bit of goal 5 here.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is the one goal statement with the most number of policies.
I'm curious regarding policy B, since the decision about the Metro South transfer station has not been decided yet, whether that's going to stay in Oregon City or not. How would that decision impact B? Would Oregon City still have a landfill, or do we need to, I guess there's so much up in the air about that.
Ray, I think this is more like region-wide landfill, because there is no landfill left, in Oregon City, so an active landfill. So the Metro South is just the transfer station. So I think B is just we as humans in Oregon City should be bolstering our efforts.
That's helpful. Thank you.
I see we have concepts around dark skies in E, so promoting outdoor lighting that is designed to reduce the negative impacts of light pollution. That's great. We're seeing a lot more of that type of language in comprehensive plans these days.
I hear a lot from people over the years about wildlife corridors, especially birds and sometimes animals, and I don't see it anywhere here, and I don't know the right place for it.
Thank you for catching that. I don't see it either. Excellent.
Let's see, for G, I think I wrote my comments about Mill Creek, and so I'm glad they got added in about also thinking about Mill Creek. So,
well, there's Mill Creek, but also Kenema. I mean, it's like protect the Clackamas Mountain Rivers, and but it's Newell Creek and Abernathy Creek, right? So are we talking about the waterways?
I was thinking about waterways as well.
Okay.
Because before, when I was reviewing it, it just had Clackamas and Willamette put in, Mill Creek.
Yeah, well, the Abernathy runs into Newell, so we might want to. Let's put an asterisk to make sure we're wording the Abernathy Newell Creek area the right way.
Okay, let me just add that. Hold on.
I don't want to forget Abernathy. It is important and anadromous. So.
Okay, one second. I just want to make sure I've captured this. So we're adding wildlife quarters.
So we might not have to name all of them, but you can check back with me and we can figure out the right wording for that. Okay, maybe it is just Newell / Abernathy Creek. I don't know. We'll figure it out.
Right. Okay. Excellent. Great. Anything else here?
Yeah. Just generally, well, I mean, I don't know with the next one, but just generally clean water stuff. I guess that's for G, but like
D, water conservation, maybe. Yeah. Oh, and I see wildlife habitat corridors.
Yeah, it's already here. I missed it.
I missed that too.
I thought you wrote it. I'm like, you're doing amazing.
So really for this one, it's about potentially figuring out the wording around Abernathy Creek.
Okay. So the water conservation, I want to make sure it's like, is conservation assuming water quality as well? It's that,
call it out.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, goal 5 on water quality is important for this community. And of course, we're constrained by all of our permits and requirements, and, you know, we can be aspirational. So I don't want to forget it.
Yeah. Excellent. I think it's worth adding to D. Okay. Let's move to the last one. We have 5 more minutes. All right, last one. This is also kind of going back to natural hazards, but through an environmental lens. Ensure the safety of residents and property by supporting plans, programs, and investments that aid in rapid response and recovery and minimize the future risk of natural hazard events. So I forgot, this is goal 7, natural hazards. Right. I'm memorizing them. All right, policies A, B, C, D, and E. So we have emphasis on public-private partnerships around community hazard planning. Of course, restricting development in unsafe areas. So this is steep slopes, floodplains, etc. Invest in retrofits, infrastructure redundancies, restoration of critical services following a natural hazard event, and collaboration with adjacent jurisdictions to coordinate emergency communication systems and the distribution of resources in the event of an emergency. This dovetails a little bit with some of the kind of natural hazard mitigation planning and the connected infrastructure piece as well.
Yeah, this is Roseanne, HBA. So I don't know if it would fit here or not, but I know that after the 2020 wildfires, some jurisdictions in the state either got their COAD, which is a communities active in disaster, community organizations active in disaster, I believe is what it stands for, kind of stood up or more refined and elevated to be able to respond to those needs. And Clackamas County, I mean, not the city of Oregon City, of course, but Clackamas County has a long-term recovery group that is rebuilding for folks who are uninsured or underinsured out in the unincorporated areas. But, you know, I mean, there's a world in which Oregon City residents would have to evacuate. Like they were all poised last year, but I guess my point is here or somewhere else to have that community-based organization or COAD model that is it's essentially like a human infrastructure to protect the environment, right? And to protect the people in the environment.
I love that. I think that 2 things. I think we could add kind of that human infrastructure element somehow to policy A, but then I also feel like that's a great action item. So you said community organizations active in disaster, just as a model, it's COAD, COAD, I think.
Correct.
Portland has, it's like, sorry.
Oh, it's a national model. Well, the national model is a VOAD, which is voluntary organizations active in disaster, but it follows the same national model,
right.
But like with refinements for a local level.
Totally. Portland neighborhoods have NETs, which are, neighborhood emergency teams, which are small scale kind of human disaster resiliency teams that I think probably follow pretty closely the model that you are referring to, Roseanne. That's great. And Christina, can you remind us, there are no existing kind of coordinated neighborhood level emergency teams, correct?
Well, we have CERT is involved. That's a community organization. And I don't know how they get down to the local level. I mean, they present to neighborhood associations, but I'm not aware of a coordinated geographic model.
Yeah. Okay. that would be a really interesting action item for that policy. All right, we have 1 more minute left.
Go team.
I know, go team, right? Look at us go.
Regarding policy A, just add beyond educate residents, I think educate businesses, because during the ice storm earlier this year, I learned during recent Transportation Advisory Committee meeting that the city cannot de-ice the sidewalks at businesses. And so I had to walk or bike on ice-covered sidewalks and bike lanes. And so educating businesses about that it's not the city that's going to plow your sidewalk. It's the business has to do that. And so I think saying educate businesses as well would be helpful.
I really like that, Ray.
Thank you. I just noted that. Okay, I have a number of notes, so I will do my best to report back, and please anybody chime in if there's anything that I missed. All right, I'm going to end these breakout sessions, stop sharing, and I will close all rooms. Hi, everyone. I think we are all back in the same room. I don't know about group 2, but group 1, or wait, were we group 1? I forgot. Our group killed it.
We were group 1.
Okay. Yeah, we got through all of our content. So I've got some notes for a report back. Sarah, do you want to do you have someone you want to kick off any report backs, or are you gonna?
I'll do it.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, so we got through our 2 topic areas plus an additional one. So I feel pretty good about that. Okay, so under healthy and welcoming communities, under goal 1, we talked about the need for maybe a policy that is a little bit specific to education and partnering, particularly with Clackamas Community College. That may be just a matter of doing a little wordsmithing for some of the existing policies that are in there. And we talked a little bit about the fact that the land use process doesn't necessarily feel super accessible right now. So making sure that that's captured in the policy language. We talked about specifically calling out the neighborhood associations, which is something that we've talked about before. And the fact that the city tries to maintain a bit of a independence from the neighborhood associations. But it may be that because they're such an important part of the sort of community engagement element in Oregon City, that we need to find some language where we can talk about the neighborhood associations in a way that highlights their importance, but maintains the independence from the city. So we can talk about ways to do that. Under goal 2, thank you for doing that because I don't have them all memorized. We talked about maybe a policy around providing better access to the rivers, which is a little bit covered under policy A, and I think also is covered under the environment and natural resource goals. So I was going to take another look at those and make sure that we're covering that there. Under goal 3, we did a little bit of wordsmithing, maybe use the word welcoming instead of comfortable in the goal language itself. And again, talked about partnerships with schools and colleges. Okay, you want me to move through this, go faster? Under goal 4, talked about using some language around identifying and adopting best practices prior to integrating them. Talked a little bit about housing, but I think we agreed that that's covered elsewhere, particularly under diverse economy. Under diverse economy, there was a comment about recruiting more diversity of businesses and employment types. I think some tweaking of existing policy language will get us there. Goal 2, there was a comment about mentioning housing sizes specifically and providing for smaller housing sizes. I think maybe what we've got in there sort of covers that, and that's really getting into sort of an implementation piece. We also talked about using stronger language around TOD, transit-oriented development, something a little bit stronger than encourage. Under goal 3, again, using under policy A, using a stronger word than promote, particularly because this is sort of a state mandate that cities use their land efficiently and plan for it that way. So we can look at that. Nothing under goal 4. And then we got into infrastructure under goal 1. There was some discussion about maybe working with or partnering with Clackamas County to provide better connections or access between some of the rural areas and the city center. And under policy F, focusing that more citywide instead of just downtown. So there's apparently a need for parking programs and TDM in areas other than just the downtown area. Goal 2, we talked about working, and we sort of get at it in policy C, but prioritizing in infrastructure investments in areas that are historically underserved and or areas that currently have inadequate infrastructure. So maybe some language tweaking there as well. And that's it. That's as far as we got.
Awesome.
Thanks.
That's great, because that also echoes a little bit of what we had talked about in our group. So going back to the first goal, we also in F here talked about potentially expanding that, or at least making mention of just general parking and demand management across the rest of the city as well. I think there might be value in at least emphasizing both. Other things we talked about is being consistent with our use of the word equitable versus equal. So in 1C, just saying equitable rather than equal. And then also in 1B, talking about or adding additional fuels or kind of various other types of transportation modes beyond just active transportation modes, but just recognizing that there are multiple ways in which Oregon City's carbon footprint can be reduced through the transportation network. So that is autonomous vehicles, alternative fuels, et cetera. And then one kind of conversation piece we had here is if we can't have everything, how do we make our decisions? So how do we emphasize the prioritization of other modes over some other kind of standard, congestion and vehicle standards, and making that a little bit clearer in our policy framework here. For the next one, we talked about in B regarding system development charges. We talked about the concept of exploring variable rate system development charges, which is kind of coming on the line with House Bill 2001 work. But generally speaking, just making sure that we are right sizing our SDCs to impact of development. So yeah, exploring the concept of variable rate SDCs. The next one, this is also, we looked at in A, in terms of digital communications, also speaking to that in terms of the future of autonomous vehicles. We also agreed that maybe that's something that's worth putting in to the first goal where we talk specifically about transportation infrastructure. We also had a discussion about mobility hubs in Clackamas County. So that concept of just connection, rural and urban, or connection between rural and urban areas, but then also note that there are these kind of mobility hubs that are being planned for across Clackamas County and how we might want to coordinate with that. Last one, the last one, yes, here, also talked about emphasizing mixed use in addition to various densities in terms of thinking about climate-friendly and equitable communities. Under protected environment, The first is all about parks and trails. We wanted to add age to policy D, so reducing barriers for all users, regardless of ability, comfort level, age, or native language. And also the addition of parks and open space to the rest of the policy. Some of these talk primarily about just parks, trails and open space. Some of these all talk about just parks. So we just want to remain consistent and make sure that we're capturing these policy concepts, or trails and open space are also being captured in these policy concepts. Here, we wanted to add water quality in addition to water conservation for 2D. And then also we want to work and just figure out some of the terminology. We identify in G, the Clackamas and Willamette rivers, and then Newell Creek. We think Newell Creek is also titled Abernathy Newell Creek. So we just want to confirm how we label that. And then finally, last one, we talked about kind of human infrastructure and community organizing as part of policy A. So not only public-private partnerships, but also community organizations and emergency teams that are an important role in hazard planning and resilience. And also not only educating residents about that, but also local businesses as well. And then we also identified a potential action item for that policy and exploring the model of community organizations that are active in disaster. So that's a national model similar to the Portland neighborhood emergency teams that we have in the city of Portland, and maybe exploring that model for Oregon City. I think I captured everything. Did I miss anything? Awesome, I have a thumbs up from Ray. Okay, that was a lot of content. We have 9 minutes left and I wanna make sure everyone gets out of here on time, if not a minute early. So very quickly, I will just do a sneak peek here of our comp plan document production. You saw in your packets that not only does a comprehensive plan have all of these goals and policies, but it will also have a couple of other sections in the document. We'll definitely have an introduction where we describe what a comprehensive plan is, how it's implemented, why we did a comprehensive plan update now. We'll also have a section that describes the process, so how we developed a vision and a comprehensive plan. We'll definitely include the new Oregon City 2040 vision statement, and we'll also want to help connect the vision to the statewide planning goals. But the majority of the document will be the goals and policies. We'll have a little intro at the beginning of each of the 4 themes that will likely be kind of the paragraph that you saw in the kind of background overview document that we shared with you a number of months ago. So all of the content actually for the document itself has been to a certain extent already developed. So we're going to just start putting it together in one full document. And you'll notice, or if you care to notice, and if you care to study the current comprehensive plan, we're looking at a document that is a lot more streamlined than the existing comprehensive plan. It'll be a lot shorter and a little bit more succinct. Not only do we have not 300 goals and policies, but now I think we're looking at more like 40 or 50 overall policies across the 4 themes. So a lot more succinct and a lot more of a readable, more approachable document. On the right-hand side, I just pulled a couple of examples of other comprehensive plans just to share with you that it not only is, it's a lot of text, but we're going to do our best to really make it a lot more visually engaging. So it's not just a long Word document. So hopefully that will look better in the future. Any questions about that kind of layout or table of contents? Abe Moland, one of our PAT members, wasn't able to join us tonight, but he did just send me an email and said everything looks great, but he had a suggestion about the table of contents and adding a section about equity and just explaining what that is in the context of the comprehensive plan process. So I'll just share that with you all, that I received that comment. Any questions, anything like that about this specifically? Okay, so next steps. So lots going on, actually. We may only have one more PAT meeting, but there's a lot of other things happening before that occurs in February. So once again, I know this was a lot of content tonight. We did repurpose that questionnaire that we shared at the end of the last meeting with updated content that was just shared with you at this meeting. So if you wanted to go and review any of the goals and policies and any of the other themes, do know that this questionnaire is now live. I will actually go ahead and share that in the chat so people don't can just at least put it up. So that is live. We'll have that live for the next week or so, but do know that we also, in addition, will have a virtual comprehensive plan forum that will be live for about a month, starting in early January. And if folks remember, that will be very similar to the vision forum that we had. So it'll be kind of a standalone website. And we'll have tabs, and people will be able to navigate to each tab, which will represent each theme, and be able to review the goals and also link to the policy concepts. But this is the opportunity for the community to review the work that everyone has had their hands in and be able to vet the draft goals and review the policies. So while that virtual comprehensive plan form is live through January, early February, city staff, our new planning manager, Teresa, is going to be very busy in January going out to all the various city committees as well as city commission and sharing this information with all of those committees, getting their feedback on the sections that might be most relevant to the interests of each of those committees. So we're really shopping this around, collecting as much feedback as we can from all the interested parties and departments and such. So there's a lot of content that's going to be going out and feedback that's coming in throughout the month of January. And we will be taking the feedback from tonight, from the PAT questionnaire, from the comprehensive plan forum in January, as well as all of the feedback from city committees and the commission for an updated draft of those goals and policies. And we're going to package that into a draft of the overall comprehensive plan document. So you will see that document at your final PAT meeting, which we have kind of aimed for mid-February. We will land on a date fairly soon here once we kind of get our timelines in order. But Ani, that is kind of...
Ani, so I'm gonna interject. It may be closer to late February, maybe even early March, just knowing all the groups we have to get to and getting Teresa. Right. So I don't want to, I'm already pre-expecting the final one to slide a little bit. So I want to make sure when the PAT has their final meeting that we have we're not like 3/4 of the way through our coordination and collaboration. So
perfect. Yeah. So we will keep everybody updated on a date for that final PAT meeting. And I just via the chat sent the link to the PAT questionnaire, but we will also follow up with an email afterwards with a link to that as well. So if you miss it, no worries. And we will have that live for the next week. Okay, 7:28. That is it for me. Thanks again, everyone, for showing up tonight and spending your time with us this evening. I know it's hard to do after a long day, so much appreciated.
Thanks, everyone.
I have one quick question. Just about like people who don't like going to Zoom meetings, in early next year, engaging people who are not tech savvy. Is there any possibility of having even one in-person meeting in early next year for community the people who are low tech savvy to engage in this process as these code restrictions get reduced? I just wanted to throw that out, but that's what I'm thinking about.
Ray, we can look into that. I'll work with Teresa and our city manager to see when that's something that's doable.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Christina.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening. Bye, and see you soon. Happy holidays.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.